Well, loyal followers, thank you so much for persevering after 18 minutes of confusion and terribleness. I promise you, we're going to make it up to you. We're doing something that I think is pretty unique in the health tech space, and we're excited to have this conversation. This whole concept, stealth feedback, this is a property of Hope Power Healthcare. I described it to people as Shark Tank. But let's think of a different type of shark. We're not talking about the great white shark. We're talking about nurse sharks here. We've got mission-driven health tech founders that we're operating with, and it's really just a question of like, while people are building, you're kind of seeing them grow in real time. So if there are concepts and missions that you're trying to bring to the fore, we're hoping that you get a whole lot of inspiration on today's talk with Dr. Asha Zimmerman of Primary Intelligence. So this chasm that he's focused on crossing, we're going to get to that in a minute. But before we do that, let's have a quick round of intros, starting with Dr. Asha.
Yeah, this is great. I get to redo it. So
yes.
The bumps in the road I had the first time are going to be smoothed out. My name is Asha Zimmerman. I'm a transplant surgeon who recently in October left to go full-time on our startup, which is an app. And the best kind of description I could say is I grew up in New Hampshire, went to college, majored in philosophy, but went into healthcare trying to help people, but always had kind of a tech focus. Ended up doing transplant surgery, ended up back in New Hampshire at Dartmouth. And then as language models came out, we started doing research with them, developed some novel technologies, went through an accelerator, got a little bit of funding to kind of get our feet off the ground, and then I went all in October, and excited to see where it goes, and it's been a journey. So looking forward to talking about it and the app and getting feedback.
Exciting to hear about Asha, and let's turn it over to our podcast co-host and co-conspirator, Miss Melissa Reilly.
Oh, thank you, Chris. And thinking of all in Asia, I like to say that I am a healthcare innovation architect who left the world of payers. I had usually the role at the payer of being some type of vendor approver, and through that probably did about 300 initiatives between little startup and larger entity, including some big partnership roles and some work commercializing early stage ventures. My role right now, beyond getting to spend so many hours with Chris leading the podcast charge, is to help early stage founders grow their businesses. And so we talk a lot around what they're doing and what they're not doing. And Asha, I'm really excited to spend more time with you.
Exciting to hear. And I want to throw it at Tarun too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tarun Kapoor, TK for short, internal medicine hospitalist physician by training. I've been in a number of startups myself, but most recently finished a 17-year stint at a large integrated delivery network in the southern part of New Jersey. Had a number of different roles there, but including for the last 5, I ran our digital transformation office. And so much like Melissa, who was listening on the provider side, I was on the payer side, I was listening on the provider side. And so one of my goals here today is hear about Asha and what the team is working on, but also then just to think out loud so Asha and others can hear the questions that would be going through my head at any given time.
Yes, before we jumped on, Tarun, you did say you hear voices in your head when people are describing startups and things like that, and those voices are well informed by that by the internal medicine time and then the 17 years in leading growth and transformation initiatives. So those are very valuable voices for everybody else to hear. So can't wait to dig deeper into that.
I'll just try to share a couple at any given time. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So
yeah, we can only handle one at a time of the multiple Taruns living in there. Myself, Chris Hemphill, focused on, I've been in health tech since 2009, so a little while, but then made a switch to data science and AI in the healthcare space in 2018, and have an intense focus on how on the intersect between AI and health equity. That was informed by a lot of work that I did in the startup space. So I at least like to bring the example that like we can be on the leading edge of technology, but we can also have empathy for the various underserved populations that we're working with. So happy to bring that angle to the table. So with that, again, I don't remember what I said in the first time we tried to get this live, but let's reiterate. The voices in my head, Melissa's, everybody else, like we want that to benefit you. So Mike, you're setting Mike Garofalo, you're setting a great example by speaking up in the chat. If you're in the chat, you're listening, let us know where you're from, what you're looking to learn. You saw the title, Are We Ready for AI Care Plans? Evaluating Dartmouth, a Dartmouth Surgeon's app. Like, just let us know what you're interested in, or if you have stories or comments or questions. That's all welcome here. Follow each other too. Like if somebody's saying something that you like, let them know. Give them that good feedback. It's not just about us and our LinkedIn profiles. We want everybody linking up here. So there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to say, "I met you on that Hope Power and Healthcare webinar." But with that, let's dig into primary intelligence. Dr. Asha, can you describe to us what that startup is and well, gosh, you went from being transplant surgeon all the way up until October 2025. What was that transition period?
Yeah, so to back up a little bit, we there's a couple people behind the scenes in addition to me who've been working on this technology, and we started kind of keeping an eye on things early when we saw the demo for GPT-2, realizing that healthcare is a combination of multiple things, but two primary things that healthcare does is one is it kind of is a new language, right? We describe symptoms, we describe disease processes, we describe human biology. And so in essence, it's a language of its own. And it's also a lot of pattern recognition. Like the reason we go to school so long is so we can have the experience to recognize these patterns, especially the more rare patterns that might not happen as frequently. That's why we do a lot of rotations on different services. And so when GPT-2 came out, we started thinking about this from a first principle standpoint, kind of connecting the dots. And by the time ChatGPT was released, we realized that we wanted to do some research there, mostly to try and leverage language models in a way that could really kind of give people access to health information globally for free. Because of a price disparity in terms of what they might be able to offer. So we started doing research, we went to an accelerator, and so we've been working on this since 2024. We went through the accelerator, got some startup funding, and we were building, and then in October I left practice to go full-time because it was kind of clear at that point, you can't really be a full-time, transplant surgeon and have a startup on the side. It's just not going to be successful. And so you kind of have to pull the trigger at some point and really kind of go after something if you're going to really try and have it be successful. And so going back to my philosophy background, it kind of became clear to me that in a way, if we are able to achieve some success with what we're trying to build, I can potentially help drastically more people for much cheaper than I could as a transplant surgeon through technology. And so that's kind of what prompted me to do that big transition and take the leap, so to speak.
So with that, how hard was that transition to make in October 2025? Like that's a big crossroad.
Yeah, it's a big crossroad. It's also hard because a lot of people in medicine don't usually make those big jumps, right? Like it's a lot of training, it's a lot of kind of, it's a big sunk cost. We just kind of are at a time in our lives when, this poster back here that you see, this is a lifetime in weeks, right? 4,000 weeks. And when you kind of look at it as a whole, there's a lot of boxes there. But when you look at how old you are and you're halfway through, and that's if you're lucky you get that much time, you kind of have a realization that you got to do what's, what you really want to do. Like I don't want to look back at 80 and realize I should have gone to try and do this. And so kind of functioning in like a regret minimization mindset to go after this. It may be a huge mistake, but it's at least been a lot of fun so far. And so, I get to meet new people and talk about ideas that excite me. And so for me, it's like, it's been a no-brainer choice.
kudos on escaping the golden handcuffs, as we call them, right?
Yeah.
So it takes bravery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I wish that more people would do it. I mean, it's kind of a scary jump to do, but I think that there's potential for more people to do it. And hopefully, as kind of you're doing, I think we can show people that there's another pathway to make real impact.
Cool. So tell us about it. I want to hear about the details of this tool.
Oh, of primary? Yeah. So, essentially the early research we were working on was in diagnostics, and mainly we function under the philosophy that architecture is everything, meaning the language model itself. You can never fully rely on the language model. And so we started building early with architecture. If I back up, let me just kind of explain what we're trying to do. The main problem most people deal with in life is that at any given point, you could probably boil a human's problems down to two things. You're either healthy or you're not healthy, right? And if you're healthy, you don't have to worry about anything, right? You can go through life, you can live life, you can be present. You don't have to worry about anything. If you're not healthy, you have some real things to contend with. And our system here, but also globally, doesn't really do much for the people who are unhealthy, and especially newly unhealthy people. There's a lot of barriers. There's a lot of, things within the system that make it very difficult to get access to health information, which is, probably the main reason people enter the healthcare system, but also to figure out, is this going to get better? Is this going to get worse? Is this something I need to be worried about? Am I going to be okay? All of these kind of things. And so our goal is to really start from an early period, especially with people who are experiencing new symptoms, on solving that problem by leveraging language models and AI to aggregate data so patients can feel more informed by the time they get to the doctor's office. So that's kind of where we're putting most of our focus right now, with plans for further expansion on trying to kind of take care of the whole journey for a patient. So what that looks like is, if you have new symptoms and you're not sure what to do, right now your two options are basically Google or a chatbot and then going to the doctors, but that might not be for a couple more weeks. And so that's kind of the main problem area we're trying to solve right now, is to at least inform patients so they can go into their visit kind of armed with knowledge. We view information as something that is that people ought to have access to. And the current system, you don't get information until you see your doctor, right? You don't have any reliable information until you're in that doctor's appointment with that 15-minute visit, and then you leave, right? And so our goal is to try and arm patients with information so they can go knowledgeably into that visit and get the most out of it.
So
Absolutely.
Was there a moment I kind of heard you distill, I like your simplification models. You said healthy or non-healthy, and then I almost heard aware, not aware, right? And then
I actually didn't say that, but that's a good kind of fork there, because a lot of people, that's kind of the first realization, right? What is this? What am I experiencing?
The gate for gaining the information. I'm imagining I probably have filled in some more dots for you, but you said you were inspired by ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT must have inspired you a little bit, but tell us more about that kind of in this idea creation. Chris and I love this, the moment you decide to build.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, right, I think, language models are becoming more ubiquitous, so it's a little bit easier to talk about them, but they're really basically machine learning on pattern recognition, and language. And that is, like I said before, essentially what medicine is. And so while general models like ChatGPT and Claude may be able to help people when they ask and already know what's going on, what they're not going to be good at is they're not specifically designed to talk to a patient and help them how to organize their thoughts before their doctor's visit, right? The ultimate goal, there's no where we want to be and where we can be currently are two separate spaces, meaning the best case scenario is that in 10 years, you won't need to go to the doctor to get your diagnosis, right? You can get it through a FDA approved kind of process for figuring out what the likely diagnosis is. You'll have a way to easily get labs, access to medications. I think the doctor, we can improve the role to not be the history gathering, but really the important part of most of the conversations, which is talking about what the risk tolerance of the patient is, what kind of treatment they want to do. Like all of this process that is much more nuanced and requires the human side is kind of how I envision doctors' role will transition over time. But that's like, 10 years down the line. And so how do we build a system that hopefully helps all patients navigate the healthcare system better in the meantime? And that's kind of why we're trying to build for informing patients before their doctor's visit.
Well, you've laid out a beautiful future over the next 10 years, and like in 2024, like actually a long time ago, GPT-2, you started staking that claim in it, and then October 25, you said let's go full time. So that journey in the going along and knowing our backgrounds and all that, what can we help you do today?
Yeah. One of the things that we struggle with is I think it would be, I come from healthcare, and TK will probably know this too. Like when you become a doctor, everything else besides the patient's well-being takes the back seat. And when you enter into the entrepreneurial space, a lot of the kind of default mode in that space is revenue-based or profit-based. And so like a lot of the systems function on you raise capital so then you can generate more revenue and grow. And in that, I think the patient can get left behind. And so the biggest problem we're struggling with is like, we wrote out a mission statement very early, and we really just care about two things: the patient or user outcome. Like we want to develop technologies that provide value for them, that improve their lives, right? And then privacy. And then like everything else is kind of like a second thought. And so how do you build something that's a novel technology that is going to be in the playground, so to speak, with all these other companies which are revenue focused? Like how do you build in that space to focus on the user and the patient and really make them fully equipped to navigate the healthcare system? Like how do you have a mission focused business that succeeds? Because part of the problem is OpenAI is a good example. They started out as a nonprofit, right? And we debated doing that too. But now they are like trying to release from that, prior intention. And how do we build a company that still focuses on the user and their privacy, and everything else will hopefully take care of itself? And so figuring out what that looks like right now, we're going, direct to consumer. Do we want to, integrate with health practices and have the health practice be kind of like layer one that pays for the services? For our technologies, and kind of like helping us define that landscape as someone who's a new founder. Obviously we went through an accelerator, I understand a bit of the landscape, but helping me kind of brainstorm maybe novel ways of really providing something useful for people without having to focus on revenue the whole time.
Maybe I'll recite a line my previous CEO at our health system used. In order to do good, you need to do well. And they're not mutually exclusive. And the road to good intentions is paved with bankruptcy. And you're going to need, and these are not cheap models to build, correct? I mean, there's a reason why.
Yeah,
they're not necessarily cheap models to build, and I think what that gets really where it kind of gets interesting, and I'm kind of curious about where you're seeing primary intelligence going, because I would totally agree with your thesis of ChatGPT, and when the initial ones came out, it wasn't geared towards directly working with the consumer. Well, we're up to 5.4 now on the ChatGPT, on the OpenAI side, Claude, et cetera. They're crushing the United States medical licensing exam.
Yeah.
Right, and they are, and I've been using it clinically just to look at my own symptoms at times before I go to UpToDate, which is right, like kind of a holy grail from an internal medicine perspective. It's really good. So what is different about primary intelligence that you're really focused on?
Yeah, two things that are easy kind of slam dunks things for me to explain. So the first is that, as you know, as a provider using a language model, it's much easier to know all the things you have to put in. Like if you've seen the data, like a lot of people are using ChatGPT for medical inquiries, right? Like I think, Chris, when we were at that conference where we first met, they were talking about historically Google used to be about 20 to 25% were health-related queries on the Google search bar. And that is now switched over to Perplexity and ChatGPT and Anthropic, right? Now, the problem is, I think they will do well for the majority of situations, right? But they aren't tooled specifically to be for health information. And there's a number of things that we do specifically different to try and pull information into the system that will help improve the quality of the outputs. So that's kind of our first philosophy, is that that is in the same way that, like, if you just type into a Google search bar, people are going to get led down the wrong pathways, rather than when they see a doctor, the doctor asks the appropriate questions, gathers all of the relevant clinical context to then come up with an answer, right? And so this is kind of what we
Can I ask you
have.
a question on point
Please.
one? So prior in my career, I did some work. I have some friends that were with this company called Buoy Health. And so I always believe in standing on the shoulders of giants, or, it maybe not always giants in these cases, but I thought Buoy was on an excellent path in that they trained their LLM back in the day before the models were as powerful as they are now on papers. So many of the clinical papers, and they were specifically teasing out how clinical decision support started to happen so that they could actually make more of a medical chatbot, right? And so, have you looked? Because I always think that's one thing that founders should do, is like look to others before them, right? To differentiate and go beyond. So have you seen Buoy, or were there others that you wanted to step apart from as you built your LLMs?
Two classic ways that people have trained their models, and we took a third approach. One is using RAG systems, which is retrieval augmented generation, which is in some ways a technological moat, but it can be expensive to run. Meaning, if you look at Open Evidence, which TK is probably familiar with, I don't know what their backend looks like, but it is almost certainly a RAG, which is basically like you take a corpus of data and you put that into vectors, and then your language model can query those vectors to get an answer and then have like a citation, right? And Perplexity probably does something similar. And so it classically was the belief to have the ground truth. Now, part of the problem with that from a clinical decision-making standpoint is when TK is encountering a new patient with new symptoms and he's using his actual knowledge base, that's more of a pattern recognition experience process. The papers are used on the other side, which is like coming up with treatment algorithms, current medication use, best practices, those kind of things. And so when we are trying to solve the problem of like patients who are undiagnosed, we did not go down that route for two reasons. One is that they're expensive to maintain and they are a moat, but RAG is a technology that is not, it's not always going to be, I don't think, the primary technology for retrieval for language models. Like there's other people doing some interesting things now. And it can cost some of these companies pay $80,000 a year to just maintain their RAG vector database. So we didn't go down that path. The other is so you have RAG databases for actual clinical references, and then you have the natural ability of the language models, which are somewhat restricted. Our belief is that architecture, meaning the tooling for how the language models are used, is going to be kind of the whole process that will be something we can carry forward, being agnostic to the language model. So let me put it this way. When we were doing research back when we were in the accelerator, we were able to use old models. So like something like Llama 3, which is not anywhere near the frontier models, right? And even at that point, we were able to squeeze a lot more juice out of the back-end architecture of our system and framework. And on specific data sets we had, which were patient data sets, even though we didn't have a RAG or anything set up, we were able to perform on par or better than certain physician populations that we had benchmarks for, right? And so as the models improve, we can take Llama 3 out and we can put the new model in. And so this is kind of like our philosophy on staying adaptive to future technologies, is to not be like, while RAG has a moat, you're kind of committed to being RAG based for eternity, right? And there are new technologies coming out. And so this is kind of one of the things that we are kind of dealing with. Looking back on other technologies, we have looked at some of the other ones and seen what other people are doing. And we're kind of continuing to develop our own framework. But
honestly,
I don't know if that answered your question.
I was just going to say that this is one of those moments that I think a lot of people should be writing down. People who are building AI startups, because what I do see a lot of in my advising is that people will just hang their hat entirely on one set of models. Let's use Claude, for example. They'll hang their hat entirely there, rather than seeking out a harness approach that allows those models to be interchangeable, or even for the various tasks that you'll that they're embarking on, rather than this one model that to rule them all vendor lock-in approach. I like hearing about the ability about how y'all set this harness that has the underlying tech is interchangeable.
It may be the wrong bet, but it's at least kind of like, I'm sure as you guys know, when you're developing this, you see these pathways and you're like, well, which one do we go down? And we kind of chose this one, mostly because we can it's much easier for us to stay up to date on like what's coming out in archives, for example, about like new technologies for squeezing more of the models. And so we can incorporate that in our framework rather than having to like, if Google releases a new technology that makes RAG obsolete, then open evidence is kind of be in some trouble, right? Because if someone can suddenly do a better version than RAG for retrieval of information, then it's just, your moat is kind of useless at that point. And so we're trying to maintain an adaptive response as the technology advances.
So, and I'll just throw another example out there because, I'm a big proponent of open source. And, open source was untenable for a lot of people, for a lot of use cases just 2 years ago. And a lot of people, like, once they saw, playing with Llama versus playing with the leading frontier models, is like, there were just too much time and tuning and effort to make this thing good that would eventually be washed away. But now, over the past week, we have the release of Gemma 4. There's open source models coming out of Alibaba earlier this year that are just there's so much capability there, and I think that your approach allows people to explore down that path. But that's just me on the soapbox. I really wanted to dig into your point earlier about how to operate in a mission-driven way, although, as the great Dr. Tarun Kapoor said, the road to good intentions is paved in bankruptcies. So can you talk to us about a struggle that you're having with regards to that balance?
Yeah, I can tell you currently where we are struggling is, so we have grown our user base, and so we right now operate, let me back up. So part of the core mission is to always have health information to at least some extent available for free to people who use our product. Like, that's the whole mission of why we're doing this. Like, it's how I justify leaving practice to help people, right? Like, I don't want to just build something and put it behind a paywall. And so, like, we always want to have those core features to be free. And TK had mentioned, like, how costly this is. In some ways, because of our tooling and the way we utilize models, we utilize open weight models where we can. And so, like, when I mentioned when we did our analysis on clinical data sets, we did over 2,200 cases in less than an hour of compute time for less than $18. And so, like, our average user cost is really low. And so if you think about the value of care delivery as the quality divided by the cost, right? Like, I don't know if this shows up, but
No.
V equals quality, divided by cost. It's a pretty simple equation, is classically what they discuss. If you can keep quality the same, or maybe even improve it, and drop the V underneath the denominator by 1,000, 10,000 fold, depending on how much you can reduce cost, then, like, you can really improve the value of care delivery. And so this is kind of like what we're,
Well, it's going to be provocative for a moment, right?
Please,
so
yeah.
The V only shows up if you can acquire your customers. And so
Yeah.
like the harder challenge I think for these early stage companies is CAC, right? So can you also tell
Yeah.
us a little bit around how you're gaining your user base today? And maybe because I do think that's the classic struggle is the E, not the value, the E, the
Oh,
engagement.
for
The
sure.
value's there. People just can't get to the E, or they can't cover the CAC of getting eyeballs to their product.
100%. And so this is like what I'm curious to talk to you guys about, because as when we first started building, first off, we're met with the, well, no one's ever going to use that. Like that doesn't make sense. It will never be able to do what you're saying it's going to be able to do. And now it's kind of like accepted, like, oh yes, this, of course, this is like the next step. And so really, like with language models and the ability to code now, like the moat of creation is like no longer the problem. The bottleneck is distribution. And so this is something that we kind of struggled with, is to be a bootstrapped company, especially that offers something like essentially for free until we offer like higher tier features, like, deeper research or those kind of things. Like how do we grow? And so we tried initially like with paid ads, and we did some video development, and that got us nowhere. And I think honestly, like this is my 2 cents, is that in the future, like most app distribution outside of like VC funding, pay like a high amount for CAC, will be one, value delivery to the user, and then two is like probably like founder distribution channels. So like most of our users have actually come from social media. Like when Chris, I think we met in November or something like that when you came and did the conference. I was driving back with
I got a shout out to
Yeah.
Dartmouth Digital Health Conference. Put that on the map if you haven't heard of that. They do a killer rundown of like Dartmouth's scientific community, and it's free. It's free for people to come and access and attend. So get up to Hanover and hang out with those folks. Just wanted to give them a shout out because that's how we met. So
yeah, no, there was a bunch of like sleeper presentations in there that were unbelievable. But so we're focusing on user acquisition through like social media. So like we started in December, I think, and like my account's up to like 18,000 followers across platforms, and that is like pretty correlated with new users. Meaning like if videos do well, because I'm talking about something that is important to people. One, it signals to me that we're actually creating something of value to people, but two, it also tells me that that's probably going to be the way of distribution for bootstrapped companies. I mean, unless you guys have any other thoughts on this.
Well, Whoop was in my building
Yeah.
like 10 years ago, and I just saw their B number come out in terms of valuation.
Yeah.
So there is also the celebrity influencer angle, right? I mean, if you say Whoop really took off, you're absolutely right. There's value in Whoop 1,000%. It's not meant to be a Whoop commercial, right? But also there is this now world of like, I do what Michael Jordan tells me to do, or LeBron James, or whomever is the current influencer of the day.
Yeah. No, I
was going to just maybe go, or why don't you answer that question, and then let me tell you where I think there might be an angle here for worth internal reflection. Go ahead. If you were going to respond to Melissa's comment.
Oh, no. Yeah, I just was going to see if Michael Jordan was listening, if he wanted to also represent primary intelligence, but
I heard LeBron was on. I think he was in the
good.
chat earlier. Yeah.
So a couple of things are kind of crossing. I said I would share the voices in my head, and I'll try to keep it down to a couple of them. To me, this is not a technological innovation opportunity. This is a business model innovation opportunity. The end user is going to defer to you as to, we're pivoting from Chat, GPT to Perplexity behind the scenes. They don't want to deal with that, all right? And so there's an opportunity for you to build trust with the end user. Say, hey, we monitor the models, because no one can keep up with the stuff, because the innovation space is so crazy. So I don't have to worry about flipping and having 5 different paid accounts. And that's the other key thing, right? Most people don't realize I have to have a paid account to one of the frontier models in order to get the most cutting edge models. Otherwise, if you're using free, you're using 1-year-old plus models.
Can I be controversial again just for a second? I would say your average Joe, like you all have a bias because you're trained both in the data and the science to look for the best, right? But I would say your average person, the average Joe on the street only cares about the precision when it has harmed them, right? I mean, they're not actually, it's going to be whichever there is easier for them. Claude, ChatGPT, that's where they're going to hit unless they have a bad experience and then say, I need perfection.
Yeah, and along those lines, they're not going to know until it is too late. So there is a trust angle here that has to play, and so I'm almost like I'm even trying to think through. It's like, okay, Khan Academy, free forever, and that is like an aspiration here. Well, but Khan has got a remarkable revenue flywheel through general stuff like philanthropy, individuals contributing. And so I'm almost wondering, is there an opportunity for you to start thinking through, say, trying to get in touch with users to say, you make your contribution, whatever it is, $50 a year, $20 a year, whatever you can, and look what we're doing for you, the community. Here, we take care of that all behind the scenes. That's where I think there might be, again, I don't know if that's the right answer, but otherwise, if you're just going to compete head to head, because as of right now, I'm still trying to figure out how to differentiate you from a frontier model, and I don't know if that wins. But I think if you can say this is how we're different, to Melissa's point, leave the technical part aside. Here's our business model, the way that a Khan Academy and even a crowdsourced platform, and the world owns it. The one other consideration is, that goes in my mind is the U.S. market the place to be testing this? Are there other markets that are far less litigious, that are far more open to match spaces worth looking at?
Can I add one? It's like, could you really sit with your consumers and add a feature that creates stickiness or value? So when you think about, like, I'll just keep going back to my Whoop example. I'll just stay on it, right? The people that like Whoop like it because they don't have a face, right? It's not another screen to look at, right? So like, what is the feature that people say, well, yeah, I'm going to ask my chat GPT, what should I do about the boyfriend that's not calling me back? But, for all my health stuff, I go here because it's got my file cabinet of all my data, So like, there's got to be a feature that is compelling to the human that has the problem.
Yep.
So yeah. I wonder, you've got a user base. Do you have some insight or feedback on what's bringing those people to keep coming back to primary intelligence versus the other options?
So we have some feedback. What I would say is, like, where it's difficult is, so we have gone through HIPAA compliance. We are not a HIPAA covered entity because we don't provide care. And we're not a HIPAA business associate because we haven't intertwined with medical records, even though we have that feature set, like, pretty much built. And so we're kind of in this space where we have gone through the privacy, and so we are somewhat limited in the analytics that we can look at. But what I will say is that when we think about this problem, the stickiness factor that Melissa mentioned, we were like, do we build features to make it more sticky so we can justify a price tag? Or do we just recognize that, people will have a problem once or twice a year and hopefully they'll remember their good experience? So some of the things that we're building, just because we're trying to maintain that kind of North Star of user outcomes, is if you have a new issue, when you go, visit your doctor or, eventually schedule your doctor's appointment, having data points over time will also theoretically help improve our models, but also improve the data that you can provide your doctor for symptoms. And so symptom tracking is a classic one. Reminders on getting repeat labs. Another classic one we have is using the U.S. Preventative Task Force. So you can go through and get a wellness check to find out, oh, my doctor never ordered this, which is grade A recommendation from the U.S. Preventative Task Force that I should have had CT scan of the chest for lung cancer screening. And so people can advocate for themselves. And so this is where we are in the building process. Is like most of our research was on working and improving the outputs for an undiagnosed individual, and now we're starting to spread out on features to see what's connecting with people, whether that's deep research to really look at the most cutting edge medical literature on your particular new problem, or EMR integration and those kind of things. And so this is kind of where we are exploring it. And I don't know if you guys have tips for the best way to we basically have some bets here and there, and like we were planning on just going down whichever one users tend to value the most.
Did you make a persona? Did you do your persona exercise?
Yeah, we did do that. But we actually find that a lot of people using it don't fit that persona. So initially we developed it for kind of like the family chief medical officer, which typically is classically moms who have a couple kids. They might have aging parents. They oftentimes are asking questions of the internet or language models on behalf of their the people that depend on them. And so that's kind of like our ideal customer, but we find that it's actually like pretty broad range of customers.
Do you have so like it happens all the time in persona development? Like the personas that I think are reflective are very different from who actually comes to the table. And you start learning about people that way. What are some of the biggest points that you've learned from your customer base? Like what are you learning from them and how to deliver a great experience for them?
Yeah, most of our customers, because I think they are predominantly coming from the social media where we focus on privacy and kind of like data sovereignty, like the data that you put into our app is like solely yours, like we don't have access to it. And I think that it's probably going to be predominantly a privacy focused individual who doesn't want to put information on ChatGPT for ads to be run about, whatever new kind of complaint they have, or they might not trust the kind of bigger industry standards. And I think that's probably like a lever we should pull on to do. But yeah, I mean, some of it is that we probably don't interact with users enough. We do user interviews like pretty frequently, but like at 1,500 users, it's hard to get all of the user feedback. And I've heard a couple of scenarios. Is it I don't remember what he founded, but where they use like kind of the people who use the app who said that they would be devastated if they didn't have it anymore, to get that above 40% to be like, okay, now I have product market fit, and really kind of gearing towards those users. I don't know that we have people who really, really love the app that much yet, but part of that may just be because it depends on so many interactions to really feel that way.
I want to know the switching moment. So I think if you can tease out the moment that they choose you above all the other substitutes, complements, what does that unlock? Why did they choose you? Because I wonder if there's a moment where you can tease that out further.
Yeah, we've had a couple of, and I need to record these for showing this experience, but we've had several people reach out to us who had instances where language models and even their doctors were unable to kind of figure out what was going on, and then through our models they were able to talk to their doctor, order testing, and then get a diagnosis. And several of them went on to end up needing surgery and having things that were going unnoticed for a while. And so that's probably like the user journey that we need to kind of focus on, is like those people who really have been
misdiagnosed.
Kind of not. Yeah, I mean, it's like we have to be careful here because we're not providing a diagnosis, right? Like we are an app in the wellness space, and there's no FDA approval process for disease agnostic software as a medical device yet. And so we are functioning on trying to inform patients as we go through this process as much as possible so they can advocate for themselves, right? Like we are basically like a research resource for people. But yeah, those are the patients who are, I think, probably like very impressed and really kind of attached to the product. But
So
then
quick
again,
comment-
like this, yeah, I guess the question there is like, so that's a single point in time, and if that's fixed, then like how do you increase the stickiness factor for them, right?
Quick comment on time. Let's see, we were 18 minutes late to start, so we're going to go 15 minutes over. So I'm going to owe everybody 3 minutes after this. The other thing I wanted to point out, was a really interesting approach to market research that Anthropic recently released on what 81,000 people want from AI. Now, you can go, if you Google Anthropic 81,000, you'll find this, and you'll find very well-presented insights, like what people hope for, where AI has delivered on the vision. But the reason I'm sharing this is because it's a mechanism, it's a research mechanism that you can actually emulate. I'm gonna read this out loud. Last December, tens of thousands of Claude users around the world had a conversation with our AI interviewer to share how they use AI and what they dream it could make possible and what they fear it might do. So I would encourage something very similar, where like you have the ability to have, like there are people that are used to your chat interface already. If there is an AI interviewer that you incorporate, then among this multiple thousands of users, you can start getting insight, and then using, your machine learning engineer should know about very powerful, very useful natural language processing techniques that are going to get you insight topics and things like that from your user base. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. We just put something into our onboarding that's kind of like this, but also like future feature requests. Like what's the most helpful way we could help you on your health journey, like to get feedback from users when they're using it.
And I wonder if there are other potential partners that could help you through this. Like hearing about you makes me think a little bit about like a second MD, and I'll have to look at their business model to say, were they technically a provider that was tech enabled, or like how did the second opinions kind of work? But like their population set was really interesting, like who they targeted, right? So you could also look at, like you said before, I think you said newly diagnosed, and you could say, hey, is there an opportunity for people with newly diagnosed with worries? Can you capitalize on that? That's horrible, to like, inject your product into their decision-making stream. Yeah.
Because honestly, like, as you guys have pointed out, like our biggest problem is no one's ever heard of us, right? Like,
and there's others out there, that play your role, even though they may not have your I don't want to say your medical authority, but your capability set.
I think that there's an advantage. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to just offer in there, it was sparked by looking at the map that was on the Anthropic site that Chris had just referenced. Yeah, you saw the dots on the map. You saw the places that dots were not. Or like the entire Midwest was blank. And California was essentially fully populated. Just adding in, like, understanding some unique aspects of the population is, some aspects of the population that you're currently servicing. Is there a trend or a pattern there that you're being, because you may be having an appeal that you never even thought, oh wow, there's something unintentionally about our interface, something unintentionally about X that is drawing people in. I never even thought to focus on that. And I think another lesson from a mentor, no one ever went out of business because they focused too much. And you may not be the biggest business, but you'll still be around. And early on in the game, especially for startups, you want to be around until the next opportunity comes along. So I just, again, being hyper focused on, we do this thing really, really well. And as a transplant surgeon, you would understand this, right? There's the transplant surgeon who's really, really good at transplanting the tip of the pancreas. If anything such existed, will stay in business. May not be the most busy, but will stay in business. And that is one of the things I think is a question that's going through my head. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, go. Let's lean on that question.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great point. We are, because, if we back up, because we're bootstrapped and because we are trying to build this so it will exist theoretically, like, into the future, we are talking about how we kind of can maintain. So like our runway, given our cost to run our systems, because we do it, we're basically hitting the sweet spot between quality and cost, kind of like ideally, like in finances, like you're investing in the best risk for reward, right? And so we're kind of doing that with our models and which models we're using. Obviously, you can always turn up the cost of your system by just like using larger and larger models with kind of questionable improvements in output. But yeah, I mean, this is a really good question: is how do we make sure? And one of the things we've talked about is because of our systems and how much we have kind of developed systems to be able to develop and roll out features. Like we've talked about whether or not we release other apps that generate revenue that can actually basically subsidize this, so we don't have to ever worry about it, right? Meaning, in some ways, it'd almost be easy to raise money doing another app that is clearly just like much easier to charge money for to feed the cost, because our actual costs are not all that much from an infrastructure standpoint. Obviously, there's legal costs and these kind of things, but those are like more yearly type thing.
So can I be provocative again?
Yeah.
Okay, and a lot of people I see in your similar situation, even with the bent to doing good, ultimately go to a place where many feel is bad, which is pharma and rare diseases, right? And so you could probably hop on like a couple Reddit streams for people that are struggling with like, what is this, right? Or, or you put some Reddit ambassadors out there that like say, oh, I did this on Reddit, it worked for me, right? And then there's a potential where you're being able to show some of your data sets to like a pharma who is trying to look for some rare people for some rare medications, and then you could use pharma to pay for it. Now, not everyone loves my creative and evil ideas sometimes, but like I'm just saying it's done, and sometimes you can monetize pharma for good.
Yeah, this is kind of what we were thinking with the layer 2. Like if we can figure out a way to work essentially as a funnel for either direct primary care or something along those lines, then they can keep the ship afloat, so to speak, and we can continue to just focus on privacy and output because we don't need to spend a lot on tech, but we work just because of trust that we build with users. That's at least kind of how we're thinking about it.
Like I like hearing the refrain of, we know our users want privacy, we're going to focus on privacy. There's all kinds of things that you can honestly target aggressively with, because how many people trust OpenAI, Anthropic, like people use these tools and all that, but the trust and the love is left the room, and there's a big opportunity to capitalize on doing the right thing and people knowing that you're purpose built. It leads me to a question. What about the health equity perspective? Knowing that your mission.
I knew this was coming, guys. We don't get through a session, and I love Chris for that.
Just curious overall. I mean, like you mentioned pharma, and like Sanofi partnered with the NAACP recently to produce a guide on AI and health equity. So I just wanted to hear about where that comes into your picture.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, let me back up. So in some future environment, 10, 15 years down the line, like people will be like doing what we're talking about doing, right? And the question will be how they're doing that, right? And so this is kind of like where we are trying to plant a stick in the ground to say like, hey, we think we can do this ethically and maintain these values on privacy and user outcomes. And that can be the sole focus, and it doesn't have to be like just profit-based. My guess is that a lot of the players you'll see in the field will mostly not be that way. And so our hope is that, kind of like how Toms can enter the shoe industry when Nike's like this massive company, and of Toms, not because they have the sickest looking shoes or anything like that, but because they like stand on actual values, or like Patagonia, for example, right? Like that, I do think that in this new era where like technology, like you don't need a bajillion engineers to develop a technology, that you can actually have like an ethical value-based company, and that hopefully people will kind of go towards that as long as you can actually provide value to the users in the same way that the other companies do. There's a really good book, I don't know if you guys have come across it, called Inshitification. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that in the podcast, but they basically kind of talk, you guys should check out the book. It's good. They talk about kind of this, like the problem with like a lot of these larger companies is as they go through the cycle, in order to continue like their increasing revenue, you kind of have to slowly start taking things away, and it ends up being just like a really poor experience for the user. And so this is kind of like we're trying to flip that the other way and maintain like user loyalty, even though we're kind of at a small base. But
well,
so
let us pray that
to answer your question, like the whole goal is to like level the playing field for like health equity on information and giving people access.
Well, I want to have conversations with you after this on that, because this conversation, your user base and expansion has sparked some ideas where I think there's some opportunities. But overall, let's hope that you don't become Citizen Kane down that journey. We don't want to see you primary intelligence and shitified. But now that we've had this conversation, I want to ask across the board, but I want to start with you, Asha. What change, or like with this 1 hour conversation, what's a change that you're focused on bringing in?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we do, but like it's always hard to prioritize where you should be kind of spending your time as a founder, right? And so, we build features, we do all this kind of stuff, but most of the questions seem to revolve around not having enough data on user experience. And so it's kind of like, if I had a magic wand and could create more time, what would I spend more time on? It's that. But I have to like also recognize like I have some resistance, and so we talked about earlier on like you should probably run towards that resistance, and so I will definitely increase that. But the other aspects are just trying to figure out like how to like sit with users and really see their experience, and like but find the users who actually need you in the time they need you. Does that make sense? Like, if you think of, like, I think in the book in Ogilvy, he talks about like when you market to like people who are getting married, right? Like they will get married and then they are gone, but there will always be a parade of people who are getting married. And if you can figure out the best way to advertise to people who are getting married, then that parade is always coming. And it's kind of the same way with illness, right? And so like trying to find the right user who's like in that experience at that time to get their feedback is kind of the best case. Yeah.
Can I tell you my best tip for that?
Yeah.
Go find the pain. Go find where the pain is, because pain makes people take action. People that aren't in enough pain don't take action.
Right.
Yeah, I had to get laid off from my job to start a company. So. Go ahead, Tarun.
No, and I think along those lines, you said, right now, one of the questions I would challenge you is like, well, we are not a diagnostic company. Okay, then what would it take to become a diagnostic company? And I know that is fraught with all sorts of stuff, right? But to the question that Melissa's even talking about, like, that's a pain. No LLM company, whether it's the frontier, especially the frontiers, or even the ones who are doing stuff like you're trying to do, is saying we're actually willing to validate and vet and take responsibility for a perceived diagnosis. And I just think through like what Doctronic, it's a different space, but what Doctronic just did in Utah, they went and got malpractice coverage. That changes the game for me in terms of, okay, that's a legit tool now that's willing to back itself up. I just think there are some things that you said that, hey, we just can't do that. And I would challenge why. And what do you have to lose at this point too, right? So I just, those are some of those questions that I would think about.
Yeah, I would be curious to your guys' thoughts, because we've talked about going to like New Zealand or somewhere where the regulatory framework might be a little bit easier to run a trial and get something with, suddenly you have like a stamp of approval in one country, then it becomes much easier in another country to get that. And so, if there's no process here, how do you do that? And so one of the things we've kind of debated is, like, I see this as like two ends of the spectrum, because in some ways I'm like, well, we should like basically like burn our boats and swing for the fences, but that's like also antithetical to trying to be around when the other, like, so for example, when we were starting, people were like, oh, CarePods already has that covered. CarePods is gone. Like, they filed for bankruptcy, right? Like they raised a ton of money and they're gone already. And so like in some ways, like the staying power has value here, especially if you can like kind of constantly provide value to people, versus like, I do agree with you. Like part of me wants to just like swing for the fences and go for those things. But obviously this is probably the most litigious area that Doctronics, like, they're entering. If you're going to make claims of diagnostics, like
Bowie was not a diagnostic, and they played right on top of the care navigation space. And
Yeah.
so they played in the lane of I'm care navigation, and I have the papers, the validation to back up the fact that I'm a care navigation tool. They didn't cross into diagnostics, and they were quite commercially successful. I think there's an opportunity to sit on top of the existing care navigation platforms today, provide value to them without being a diagnostic. You just need a really good lawyer to keep you clean
Yeah.
and go as far as you can on that and just be like if you, but again, then you really have to know why you're better. And like, I think you could lay out 5 or 6 contemporaries, some are still alive, some are not, and say, well, how did they do it? And follow the path of others to move yourself commercially forward. Because there's even probably like payers that are up leveling their care nav systems today that could benefit from this triage, as long as you could prove that your triage is superior than other triages.
Yeah.
I want to give you a little bit of hope as well. Particularly, I worked for Wobot, and I asked this during that Dartmouth presentation, but I'm going to ask again. So our number one referral source for users online was Google. What was our number 2 referral source? You didn't write it. You didn't take notes. Asia. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But it was ChatGPT. So if you're out there, like you're doing the research on your users and you're publishing about it, just like Anthropic published what their 81,000 users wanted from AI, you publish what your 1,000. Like, this is such valuable information, and once it's out there, what that does is it gets picked up by search engines, and it also gets picked up by LLM searches. We didn't have any at Wobot. We didn't have any kind of AIO strategy, like AI optimization. We just were publishing research and materials and blogs and things like that, and we got so authoritative that it reached a certain point when an LLM was confronted with mental health questions. We were one of the top most frequent sources. So that's the same kind of limitation that I like. There's just things that you're going to be willing to do as a healthcare specific company that they're not, and I think that they can actually be a decent referral source for you with enough of your content and voice out there.
Yeah, we've worked on some of that. Yeah, this is a place that we've spent a decent amount of time trying to figure out, and where I'm curious if you guys have seen any unique strategies. Is that we're kind of operating under the same kind of guidelines a lot of other companies are doing. So like, there's other companies who are just like spamming their websites with like SEO, GEO optimized stuff. And so like, like 1 out of 10, they'll like be wildly successful with it. But like a lot of them like actually get like Google's SEO like will actually penalize you. And so we're kind of trying to find this sweet spot, but I'm sure some people have figured out like secret hacks and these kind of things like, because it's what we need to work on,
Ours, I mean, again, we didn't have a specific strategy around that. We were just putting out blog posts and putting out research and
like press releases and stuff.
Press releases like press releases about actually important things, like the performance on working alliance inventory versus like different classes of apps and clinicians and things like that. Like by putting out real information, randomized control trials, things like that. I think that had a big impact for us. But it's like, could go on forever. Y'all know I love to ramble. We all do. But I just want to thank you, Dr. Asha, for being our patient zero.
The guinea pig, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So any thoughts that
How
you have
do we
fun?
find you? Yeah, Chris, we have to ask, how do we find you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram. It's just Asia Builds. But yeah, you following the journey. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll be building. And
do you want to shout out the link to your company so people that are listening?
Yeah, they could just search. Yeah, it's just Primary Intelligence. It's in the app stores. You can find it. tell us, if you have feedback, give us feedback. We love to hear like what features you want, where in your journey you want, kind of more help to navigate the system. Yeah.
All right. Well, absolutely lovely, y'all. And with that, we will see you next time.